Good day. I'm here today with Clarence Swartz. I'm David Tyler, the editor of The Messenger. Clarence was in the Air Force in World War II, and we're just going to discuss his story today. Clarence, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Indiana, Connersville, Indiana, in October 14th, 1919. And I'll go right along. In October of 1941, I was drafted in service. And at that time, you were drafted for 1 year. At the end of 1 year, you could get out. Well, I went to Indianapolis, Indiana for induction center, and we were there for about 9 days. And they came around and they asked us if we wanted to join the Air Force. And my...
Go ahead.
Okay, I was drafted in Indiana, in Connersville, Indiana. I went to Indianapolis for induction center, and we were there for... I was drafted, by the way, into the Army Air Force, and the Army Air Force was one unit. So, and we were there for 9 days, and they asked us if we wanted to join the Air Force. We were only in for, drafted for a year. At that time, we could get out, get discharged. Well, when they asked if we wanted to join the Air Force, my friend and I said, yes, we did. So we were drafted, we were in then, enlisted for 4 years. So we went from Indianapolis to Keesler Field, Mississippi, and where we took our training. And while we were there, of course, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and then we were in for 4 years anyway. So it made no difference whether you were drafted for a year or not. But while we were in Mississippi, they asked us if we wanted to go to school, and some of us said yes, we would. So they shipped us out to Chanutfield, Illinois, to go to machinist school. We got up there, and they had no openings for schools at that time. They ran schools 24 hours a day around the clock. They had their kitchens and their bakeries and everything. They had their own meals. We had meals at, just to tell you, we had a half a pint of milk for dinner and supper, and a pint of milk for breakfast, and we had pies and chickens and turkeys and all. We ate like kings while we were there at Chanute Field. And we were there at military police for 9 months. And we went from there while I was there, I used to travel back and forth to my home in Indiana, which was about 260 some miles. And a lot of times we, friend and I, we hitchhiked. And I'll give you one little story about, we worked shift work, so many hours on, so many hours off. And when we were off, we could go on leave. So we had such good time hitchhiking, we did. Of course, in those days, you could very much. That we decided, my friend and I decided that one night at 12 o'clock midnight when we got off, that we would start home. Well, that was a mistake, because at 8 o'clock in the morning we were only a 40-mile away from the home, away from the base, and most of that we walked. But after that, I did get me a car, and I drove back and forth for a while. And we went from, our outfit went from, then I went from Chanute Field to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And while at Fort Wayne, of course, I used to travel back and forth. That was only 100 miles away from where I lived, and I used to travel back and forth to home then. And what makes this, I think, is because from Fort Wayne, Indiana, we came to Chanute Field, Illinois. I'm sorry, to Syracuse at Mattydale. And we were stationed out in Mattydale, and in 1943 we came to Mattydale. And give you a little side story on that. The first time I went down to Syracuse, I visited the USO. And I was sitting there in the USO, and the little boy was shining my shoes. And this good-looking girl came up and acted like she was going to step on my shoes. Of course, the little boy didn't like that too well. And she asked me to dance, and we never did dance, never got on the floor. But after that, I went to her house and had on my leave, and consequently I went back to Smithfield, Illinois, to go to school again, and it didn't turn out. I didn't think too much of it, so I came back to my outfit in Syracuse, and I went from there down to New York to the base, getting ready to ship out for overseas. And while there, I wrote my girlfriend a letter and asked her to marry me. And we came back. I came back on a 5-day leave into Syracuse, and we got married. I met her in March and married her in August, and then went overseas in October. And some of the very interesting things that I always thought was that, to go back a little ways, while I was hitchhiking back and forth from Chanute, Illinois, I was picked up by this man, Lucky Teeter's press agent, and Lucky Teeter's was a stunt man, automobile stunt man. I was picked up by his press agent. Meet very, very interesting people. And this other time, I remember these two ladies picked us up, and I've always said that they didn't drive fast; they just flew low. And but come back after we went overseas, we went over to England, and we were in Nottingham, England, which was a very interesting place. If you ever heard of Nottingham lace, which was a very much sought after material from England. And we were stationed just 18 miles out of, a little ways out of Nottingham. And I went at Christmas time. They had a Christmas party, a club in Nottingham, and the servicemen of each group that wanted to went to a Christmas home in Nottingham, and I happened to be able to go to this family's house. Two girls, a young boy, and a mother. The father and the son were in service. We were there for 3 days, plus 2 Canadians and another fella out of my outfit. And we were there for about 3 or 4 days, and the lady got up, and each morning got us breakfast. And we each had a Christmas present when we left. They were Scotch family. And so, well, after that, we left Nottingham and we went down to Newberry, England, which was just 50 miles out of London. And that was the time when the Germans were sending the V2s and V1s into London, and you could hear the bombs, V2s and V1s, come into England. And if you want to know how they sounded, you could hear them and they go, yeah, and all at once, bang, and that's when they hit London. And one other thing that I remember very much, and I have always said that anyone that was in service, I don't care whether you are in the fighting or where you were in danger. Just before, while the Germans sent bombers over England, and they didn't make it for their target, and they turned back. And just a little ways, I would say 50, 75 feet from the hospital there, they dropped their bombs. And some of them didn't go off. And that was a scary thing. And another very thing that was scary was that I was working in a motor pool, and I usually work nights. Well, this one night I didn't work. I was off, but two other fellows were. And the English had bombers out, and this fellow was telling me that they heard this roar of an engine, and he went to the door and looked out, and just about that time an English bomber come down across the runway, and he didn't make it, and the whole field was just covered with Dervish bomber. But he said, you can imagine what we felt like when we opened up the door and saw it. He said the first thing we did was we took off for the air raid shelter.
Sure.
And but stories like that makes you think back, you know. Many other things. I was a driver in a motor pool, so I got drive around all over England, several places, and we used to blackout drive with blackout lights. And for you that people don't know what it is, you have to get right up your car next in back of the yellow one to see anything, because they're little lights. And I remember this one night that we came back from a trip with just by ourselves, and we had a fellow sitting on a running board with a flashlight to show us the road. And but anyway, from England we flew across the English Channel. By the way, our outfit serviced gliders, American gliders, and other service that the Air Force run. We serviced the C. We had service with the C-46s, the C-47s, and I can't sure whether it was 45s or not, but that's the airplanes that was connected to the with the gliders.
Why don't you tell us exactly what the role of the gliders were in the war?
Well, the role of the gliders were to carry supplies and men. That was a big role of gliders. They would take a one C-47 and put two gliders behind it, and take off down the runway with two gliders, one here and one here. And when we left England, we flew across the English Channel with a glider with jeeps in it, and the airplane full of men. And you wondered whether you was going to get off of the ground or not. Well, we landed in let's see, where did we land? I can't remember where we landed now, in somewhere in France. But we went from there by train to outside of Paris, just 18 miles outside of Paris, which, by the way, is a beautiful, beautiful city. And for those that don't know, it was declared an open city, which meant there was no damage in the city of Paris. No bombing or anything like that in the city of Paris. And I used to travel to Paris on leave. I met a young fellow there, a young Frenchman, and we traveled around Paris quite a bit, sightseeing. And while in Paris, our outfit was selected to go to Germany, and by convoy. We went to Germany. We stopped in Belgium, met Belgian people, and then we went from there up to Wessel, Germany, right on the Rhine River.
What year was this?
In 1940. I think it was early in 1945. I think it was early 1945. Either early 1945 or late 1944, one of the two. But we went up to Wessel, Germany on the Rhine River, and our outfit cleaned up and flew out to all the American gliders that were any good, and described some of the things there. These gliders, the American gliders, were pretty good gliders. They would glide quite a bit. You could maneuver them. Of course, depending on how much of a load they had. But anyway, this, by the way, was the invasion of Germany by the American gliders. And one instance I remember was a group of pine trees, and this glider came in for a landing and started in at the edge of the pine trees and just sheared them right off, and the glider was still sitting on top of the trees. You could find gliders in wires, telephone wires, on top of houses or wherever they landed. It was terrible. This was pretty much a residential area too. It was not open field like you would think. Well, while we were there in Germany cleaning up the gliders, another instance I remember was we had our motor pool was out in a lot, and this German with his wagon came along, and because there was a bomb crater in the road, and the wagon got stuck in the bomb crater. Well, our outfit, our men, helped him get out, helped the German get his wagon out. And they went a little ways, and they came back and brought the servicemen a half a dozen eggs. And if you can imagine, eggs at that time were very, very, very expensive. It really showed the appreciation that they thought of us. And another thing that I would like to say is that when we had to haul our water to drinking water, and we used to have big army trucks with the water tanks on behind them, and where we went was in a little place in Wessel, Germany, and we had gotten there, and we had 4 trailers on behind the truck with water in them. And when we got there, we filled the trailer up, and it was a circle like. You went in one way and turned around and come back out the other way. And we thought, well, now, what's the use of, we couldn't turn around, so what's the use of turning around if we can go around the other way? Well, as we went around the curve, we found a great big bomb crater in the middle of the road. So we had to take the trailers off and turn around and come back the other way. I don't know. But anyway, in I was in Germany. I was in France. A friend and I were in France, and we were on a trip, a business trip, when Germany surrendered. And we came through some of these villages in France, and we were in a jeep, and we were stopped dead still.
All the people.
With the people, and they just crowded around us. We couldn't move. So many times that happened, and we had at that time any serviceman was on leave was called back to base, but because we were on a business trip, we continued.
Right.
We had 3 days for our business trip, 1 day there, 1 day back, and 1 day we could travel around. And now, what else, is there anything that you would like for me?
Let's talk a little bit about when you got out of the service.
All right. All right.
Coming home and how you felt when you got home.
Well, in 1945, we left France as we went back to France, and we left France on a Liberty ship on the way home. By the way, it took us 14 days to go across the ocean, and about that to come back. And as we left France in November, and we were ready supposedly to go overseas to Germany or to Japan, but when we were halfway in the middle of the ocean, and I have a paper here that I don't know whether you can see it or not, but a newspaper that was printed on board ship, and it gives the mileage and everything exactly halfway. I don't know whether you can get this or not. That one. Exactly halfway in the middle of the ocean when Japan surrendered.
I can read it from here. The war is over. The Japanese army has been ordered to cease fire. Hold it, though. I won't read it all.
And as I say, this is exactly halfway in the middle of the ocean.
Well, you were pretty lucky then.
I sure was lucky.
Yeah.
I had not quite enough points to get out, but with the leave that I had and everything, I was able to get discharged. We received another pamphlet when we got into New York City. Welcome home.
Those were nice words to hear, huh?
Very nice, very nice. Did you get it?
What's the date of it?
1945.
What month?
No, I think it's November.
Okay.
How did you end up landing here in Baldwinsville?
Well, of course, before I went in service, I married a girl here from West Salvie.
Excuse me.
And of course, when I come back, I stayed here.
Good. What did you do for a career after the war?
Well, I came back, and not knowing the area, I went to work in a warehouse, and then I worked for in a machine shop in East Syracuse, and then I finally went to work for GE, and I worked in all in electronics with GE for 28 years and 10 months, doing just about all kinds of work that you can imagine. And then I retired in 1982. And well, from then on, I've been, you know, just a little this and a little that.
Hold that up. Hold it
All right, this is a picture of your unit in Mattydale, right?
Right,
up.
right,
Yeah, let's hold.
right.
Which one is you?
Kind of hard to see, probably.
Kind of hard to see.
That's all right.
I can't remember now just where it is.
Well, all right, Clarence. Well, I think we're just about ready to wrap things up. Thank you for coming in here today and sharing your story with us. I'd also like to thank the Canton Woods Senior Center for hosting us here today. America is very lucky to have veterans like you who went over and served in World War II. Thank you.
This, by the way, is May 1943. And these are pictures that from some of them from England. And
Then we'll talk briefly about getting out of the war, when you came home and everything, and what you did after the war.